Welcome to Beyond the Comfort Zone Live.
This is the show where we push leaders to step beyond their comfort zones, challenge their thinking, and accelerate their success.
I'm Aviva Lebo.
And I'm Renee Klein.
As Vistage chairs, we've seen firsthand how powerful it is when high caliber leaders come together to push beyond their limits.
Because no matter how much experience you have, you don't know what you don't know. When you're at the top, getting honest, unbiased feedback is tough, and spotting your own blind spots is even tougher.
That's where the magic of peer groups comes in. Our mastermind style groups aren't just about networking, they're about real collaboration, a space where leaders challenge each other, hold each other accountable, and unlock growth they never thought possible.
And that's what this show is about too. Every episode, we explore ideas, challenges, and leadership breakthroughs to help you make smarter decisions and scale your impact.
So if you're ready to think differently, stretch your limits, and take your leadership to the next level,
Then you're in the right place. Let's go beyond the comfort zone.
our guest today is Tia Cristy. Tia Cristy is a powerhouse in communication and influence, a celebrated personality, a tips expert, CEO, a viral TEDx speaker, and internationally acclaimed communication specialist. As a best-selling author with a career spanning decades, Tia's worked alongside royalty and top industry leaders, earning her place as one of the nation's most dynamic female voices. With unmatched expertise and a passion for empowering others, Tia transforms individuals and organizations by helping them unlock their authentic voice, amplify their impact, and achieve unparalleled success in both business and in life. Industries and individuals report a 15 to 30% ROI within the first 12 months after learning and practicing these essential skills. So you're in for a special treat today. Without further ado, we'd like to welcome Tia Cristy to the show. Tia, thank you so much for being beyond the comfort zone.
Oh my gosh, ladies, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Like, this is totally my show. Beyond the comfort zone, it's what I do.
That's so good.
Oh.
Tia, you're known for taking communication beyond the boardroom. What does that really mean, and why is it so important for today's leaders?
Yeah. It is so important, especially, the title I think confuses people sometimes because, like when we work and we're founders, we're CEOs, we're out there, we're crushing it, right? And then all of a sudden, how do we clock out? Like a lot of people forget how to clock out. And I've learned that, you know, that is one of those key points that a lot of CEOs and founders were finding that was a pain point that was still sticking around, right? And so, what I found to be amazing was, especially, when before I even came into Vistage, it was like I did my research because I wanted to make sure that I was providing value to your members. And it was okay, this is the pain point. We don't know how to clock out. When we do clock out, we go home and we either are still barking at our family or we're completely submissive and we don't want to make any decision at all. And that's tough. It's really tough because, I get it. You're tired and you're exhausted. And, where is that off button? And, sometimes people don't know how to just power down. They just turn off. And then you're just doing a disservice to your family, right? And you feel that. You feel that guilt afterwards. So I was like, I really need to get in and bring this back to the forefront. I think that is such an important topic.
Mhm. What are some everyday communication habits that people don't realize are actually hurting their influence, even if they're successful, which many of our clients are?
Yes, yes. One of the biggest things that hurts us is just because we're the authority on the subject doesn't mean that we should be speaking about it. Sometimes we need to give space for other people to be the authority on a subject. If we come in and, look at it like almost like parenting, if you do everything for the child, is the child really going to learn? You know? It's the same way when we are leaders in the companies. If we're doing everything, if we're always answering, if we're always, providing that, we're giving space for people to, first off, be complacent, but not do their jobs well. If we give them space to become the authority, it allows us to learn how to step back and really let them kind of take in.
That's really good. That's really
Thank
good. I think sometimes we don't realize we do that.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's just easier, you know. Oh, I can do this. I can do it
Right.
myself,
Right.
you know. And it's 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 not what we're made to do. I think when people understand, our creation is so we can help others, it kind of takes a lot of pressure off of always having to have the answer and always have to know how to do it. But giving space to help somebody else learn it or be able to do it so they can then help others, it's really it's a cool domino effect when you really take a step back and look at it.
Mhm.
So, likability is often misunderstood. I know that's important to so many people. I see that a lot with our clients. From your experience, what actually makes someone more likable, especially in a professional setting?
Yeah, so everybody they want to be liked. And then you get to a point in business and you're kind of like, I don't care if I'm liked. I'm not here to be everybody's friend, And it's like these two different dynamics and they're really like fighting each other. But honestly, the best way to be likable is, just to be there for somebody, to be that listening ear, to see somebody, walking by and saying, "Hey, your hair looks nice today," or, "Hey, really good job on that report."
Right.
When we can do that, when we can acknowledge somebody, it really makes somebody like us and work harder for us, right? And my whole thing with communication is that I want people to feel seen, heard, and understood. It's what we all want in this world. It's really what it comes down to. So when we can do that for others, it really makes us more likable.
Yeah, that's true.
Um, so talk to me, we, just talked about how one of the big communication mishaps people have is the fact that they are knowledge experts and so they share it all the time and have to be the authority. But what are some tips and tricks that you give people to get out of that state? How can they shift?
Yeah, so a lot of times, I tell people first off, if you're not the authority on it, and I do speak, it's politically incorrect sometimes, like I don't use those soft phrases that everybody is, I guess, used to. I tell people, if you're not the authority, shut up. Like it really comes down to it. It's that simple,
Right.
like do not open your mouth because that is just talking because you think you're important or you want to hear your own voice or whatever. That's ego. If we're not the authority on something, just close your mouth. It's not important. But when we are the authority, but we see that someone else needs space to grow, a little encouragement can go a really long way. And when we can do that for others, I think that it makes us a more powerful leader. And it becomes that person that people want to rely on. We all look at The Devil Wears Prada, the Miranda. Um, you know, she went with fear and everybody feared her. But did anybody really love their job? Did anybody really feel that they were making an impact in the world? And when you can love your job and you can feel like you're making that impact and you feel like you're doing this because you're part of a team, oh my gosh, it's so much better, isn't it? It really is.
We talk so much about culture, so we agree how you make people feel can be more important than anything sometimes that we forget. Well, you do work with a lot of leaders at Vistage and top decision makers. So I'm curious, how does communication at home and in personal relationships affect leadership at work?
Oh gosh, it bleeds into it, everything, work, how work bleeds into home? Well, home bleeds into work. It really happens. And we've come into a point where, you know, yes, it's needed. HR is needed and things like that. But people have gotten so scared to, be able to ask somebody, how are you doing today? You're not allowed to have that kind of small talk anymore. It's interesting because in certain industries, the depression rate, the suicide rate, all of that stuff has increased by substantial numbers because they don't feel that they have space where they can talk to anybody. They don't feel safe. And, if we can bring that safe space back into the workspace, that home life as a bleeds over into the workspace is really important. So that's why I take a look at the home space. When we can look at the home space and we can say, all right, well, how are you interacting with your spouse? How are you interacting with your children? This is something that's usually very uncomfortable, especially for leaders to discuss, in a group setting at first. But that's why I love Vistage, because it is that safe space. You've already created that safe space. So when I come in and I'm talking with these leaders, they're it takes a minute, for that vulnerability, but they're like, oh, I'm amongst my people and I can speak freely and I'm not going to be judged. So, when I'm able to bring in the home life, it's super important because um, we need friendships too. Like, don't get me wrong, the spouse, the kids, all that stuff is important, but we got a lot of single people out there that are leaders too. And, even the married, they need friendships. And when we look at a recent study was done, and I'm just blown away by this. And I always share this. 49% of the population over the age of 29 does not feel they know how to make a friend. That's amazing, right? And it's one of those things where we need friendship. Like, we are supposed to be a unit. We are a tribal community, right? And so when we are feeling like we can't connect with people on some kind of level, there's a big problem. No wonder everybody's angry all the time, right? So if we can get back into, well, what does it look like? How do we network? How do we make networking stick? How do we make a friend? How do we make that stick? And I will tell you, it is one of the most beautiful parts of the sessions that I do with Vistage. I was actually doing one session, and to watch, some people that knew each other for years now all of a sudden make the plan to go and hang out and actually kind of water that friendship that they count on, but they never went that extra mile, so it's just really cool to see.
That's
That's
awesome.
awesome.
Yeah.
That statistic just startling and also makes so much sense at the same time. Just scary when you think about it.
Yeah.
You used a phrase a little while ago, and I want to go back to it because it kind of ties to what you just said about relationships and connection. You mentioned people feeling seen, heard, and connected. And I'm curious how you help people make the shift to leaning into that, because that's a different type of way of communicating.
Yes, I think it's the most important thing when it comes to communication. Listening is so important. And people don't think, when they hear communication, they think of words, right? But when we really dive into the nitty-gritty of communication, one of the top parts is listening. We have to be able to listen to one another. If I don't understand Renee, how am I ever going to connect with her?
Mhm.
You know, if I don't give the chance. And it's um being able to share some kind of vulnerability with one another and understand that it's not a weakness is really one of those major steps, right? So think about it, in any relationship you've ever had, when somebody sees you and says, hey, I really like that sweater today, like all of a sudden you feel good, you feel warm and fuzzy, right? And now you want to pay it forward. And the next person walks by and you're like, oh my gosh, I love your earrings. They're so great. Like it's infectious and it's such a beautiful process. And when you can get an environment like that, all of a sudden now people are starting to feel seen, right?
Mhm.
And then they feel more comfortable to come to you and say, hey, I'm having a problem with, or hey, I feel like we could make improvements if we do this. Now all of a sudden they're being heard, you know? And then when you can have a conversation with them about something that they brought to you, now they feel understood. So, I mean, it's that simple to be able to cause that reaction to happen. And when you are able to make an environment like that, it's just the improvement is unreal. Like you had mentioned about the return on investment, it is substantial. And every team that I've worked with, they come back saying the same thing. They were like, "Wow, I didn't know that these things
Mhm.
would make all the difference." So it's cool.
Well, you have incredible energy. And so I know you bring a lot of that into your sessions, a lot of interaction. Why is movement, engagement, and presence so powerful,
Yeah,
with
it
your
is.
communication?
All right. So yeah, thank you. I love coming in with great energy, right? Energy, we're made of energy, like let's get into the physics of it all, right? We're made of energy and we vibrate at, certain frequencies and we can get all into that stuff. And, sometimes that could be like a little woo-woo for somebody, right? But there's science behind it. And when we come in and we can really get into the science of that energy that we're bringing into something, it's really how we connect with people, right? So I do this whole lesson, and it's called interactional synchrony, right? And if I come in at a certain level and you come in at a different level, what is so cool, it is a natural phenomenon. We are going to try to meet, and our energies are going to try to kind of balance, right? But if one of us refuses subconsciously to do that, it's gonna wreak havoc, right? So have you ever had a conversation, Renee, with somebody and you're like, yeah, they were nice. I just didn't click though, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah,
Right? We've all had that.
right.
That's because that natural phenomenon, somebody was going against that natural phenomenon. And so when we can understand that and we can really dive into it. So I do a deep dive into it and because there's a little bit more that goes into it. And but when I do that deep dive, like all of a sudden it's very eye-opening because now you're aware of it. Now you can go into something and say, all right, uh, I'm going to match their energy. I'm going to bring them to where I need them to be. It's a beautiful process. I love it. I'm just amazed by it every time. And I get to see it on a regular basis.
It's really cool.
Hmm. Um, what about emotional intelligence? You hear that phrase all the time. How does
Oh,
that
yeah.
play into communication, and how can leaders develop it without necessarily feeling soft or inauthentic?
Yeah, that's a good question because, I think emotional intelligence is communication, like when we think about it, right? When, in the relationship world of dating is usually where you hear it the most, right? So, like somebody's able to vocalize, hey, this is my needs. And, I need you to communicate with me that you're going to go out on Thursday night. Like I need that communication. Just don't do it, And that's emotional intelligence to be able to say, this is what I need from you. Right. Well, it's the same effect when you're working with a team. You need to be able to say, this is what I need. It's not what I expect. Like you got to make sure that you're phrasing it properly because this is what I need. And my needs are different than what expectations are sometimes. So when we can sit there and we can vocalize that, and bring in that vulnerability. Now, some people are not going to respond well to vulnerability, especially in the beginning. Vulnerability, it's tough for some people. But if I said, Aviva, I need you to kind of give me a little rundown before we start our day, and just give me some cliff notes and that way we can kind of banter back and forth and I can go into the meeting feeling a little bit more confident. I'm telling you what I need, and if it's something that's outside of your space, outside of your capacity, you can say, that's not a space that I'm comfortable in, but you know what? We can find somebody that it is.
Mm.
And now all of a sudden as a team we're really starting to understand how everybody needs to communicate because the biggest mistake is that people think others communicate exactly the same way they do, and it's not true. Yeah, I mean it's just like the sky is blue. We are never going to see the same color blue. It's just not the way we're built. So when we can sit there and we take the time to say this is what I need in the communication. And somebody can say, okay, I can give that to you, or I can't. It gives space to grow.
And I can see how that builds trust in an
Absolutely.
exponential way.
Yes. Yes.
So if there are people that are listening to this and they want to be more influential and more likable today, just what are a few practical things that you recommend and they can implement immediately?
I love that. Yeah, because you know what? Influence is a conscious decision. It really is. Like we make conscious mindset to inspire others because sometimes, I mean, sometimes people, it comes really natural, and there are people out there, I mean, I'm very blessed with the power of influence. Like I've had it for a very long time, that's how I ended up in radio. But, some people, they have to be very conscious about it. And it's important to make that decision. Like, I want to shine a light on this subject, or I want to inspire people. What is the main goal? Because the main goal, money's great and everything, but is that really the main goal? That's not the main goal, right? Are we trying to make the world a better place? Probably, And so when we know what the main goal is, we're able to kind of really shine that light and say, all right, this is what I want to do. And we can then find inspiring ways to get others on our mission, right? That's what we do. So if you want to be more influential, really it comes down to knowing what is the main why, not how, not for the money, not for any of that stuff. It's the why. Why are we doing this? Why are we making this impact? I mean, you as chairs, you're doing it every day, making this impact. And it's so gorgeous. And you have your why, right? You already have it. So you're already influential in that community. And it's just beautiful. So knowing that why is super important.
When you're advising business leaders, because I see this often with executives, one's vying for this to happen in this way, and the other one, because they think they're right, thinks it should be this way, and they're opposing. And you've got to be influential to get somebody on board. You're not they're not your direct report. You can't tell them it's just going to be that way.
Mhm.
How do you advise them? Like here, you talk about why, but their whys may be different.
True.
So how do you advise they communicate to really get through a situation like that?
True. I love that because, there are. I mean, look at the world today. The world, it's split. We all have different opinions, right? But when we can sit there and we can look through the eyes of somebody else, right? I just put up a post about this the other day, which I thought was outstanding because it was so wild. It came to me. I was at my cousin's birthday party. My other family member had gotten these new glasses. I was like, let me try on your glasses. I don't need glasses, but I put them on and I couldn't see anything immediately. It was all blurry. And I was like, oh my gosh. So my first reaction was to be like, these glasses are awful. You're blind as a bat, right? Okay, there's nothing wrong with the glasses. The glasses are made for him. They're perfect for
Mhm.
him. They're not meant for me,
Right.
right? So when I can sit there and then logically say, I took his glasses and now he can't see. Is he judging me? Is he going, she doesn't have eyewear, she's crazy? No, like we have to be understanding to the other person, right? So when we get into it should be my way, no, it should be my way, and it's we have to kind of dissect it and we have to say, all right, well, please help me explain, because if we can have an open mind instead of a judgmental mind, that is where we're really going to make leaps and bounds in communication. And I just thought the glasses thing was such a cool concept because, you know, instantly, I mean, I wanted to joke about it. I wanted to be like, whoa, dude, but it was really very pun intended, eye-opening for me. And it was I was like, wow, this is definitely going into some of my teachings because
Mhm.
um we do that. We are so quick to say, no, that's not right, or I don't agree, or whatever. And it's fine to not agree, but not not just, oh, I don't agree. It's so final for people. And it's just no, that's not the way the world works. So let's take that final off the table and say, I don't agree, but can you please enlighten me? And
Mhm.
then all of a sudden, now the conversation is starting. And maybe they'll find some place in the middle and that they never even expected to get to. And that's a pretty cool concept when I see that. I love working with that. It's so powerful to see that in action.
So, Tia, last question for you.
Sure.
People love learning and they hear it and then they get overwhelmed. We talked over the weekend with some of our leaders about how a confused mind says no. So what Aviva and I love to do is offer one next right step. What's one communication tip that you could offer that you wish more people understood that would completely change their relationships and results?
Wow. Um, that that one's so hard for me to answer. I know that's probably supposed to be the easiest question, but that one's really interesting because I would say being open really is the key to it. When we can listen to what somebody else has going on, that is when we are able to, again, start to understand them. It really can open up the conversation. Being closed-minded and being like, nope, nope, nope. And you see people do it all the time. And it's almost, I mean, it's almost that physical, right? They're just, you see your words bouncing off of them. When you can be open, all of a sudden, the other person is now they feel their words being received. It doesn't mean that they're being accepted, but they're being received. And when you can do that, I think you can take a lot of that. It's just even overwhelming off the table.
Right.
You know?
That's great. Thank you
Yeah.
for
Thank you.
sharing.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, thank you. This has been amazing.
So can't let you off the hook with asking the final question we ask all of our guests.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
What is one thing beyond your comfort zone that you have never done that you should try or want to try?
Oh, goodness gracious. All right. So I'm actually about to do it. I've never gone hiking before, and my birthday is coming up, and I'm going hiking this weekend. So
Happy birthday.
Wow.
thanks.
Yes. Happy birthday and
Thank you.
anywhere cool. I love to hike, so name a trail I don't know.
I don't know. I will be in Colorado, so everything out there is just beautiful, and I am sure that it's going to be. I want to go on the one. I think there's one with a lot of waterfalls, and it's going to be cold out there. So but I think that would be really cool to see that one.
Well, you are speaking my language, a trail with waterfalls. I love it.
Yes,
Well,
I'm
thank you
excited.
so much for joining us today. It's
Yeah.
truly been an honor to have you as a guest on our show. And thank you to everyone who's joined us. Until next time on Beyond the Comfort Zone, we encourage all of our viewers to try something new outside your comfort zones because that's where growth occurs and life begins. Have a great day, everyone.